It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your feel-good breakfast show. It's Expresso on this Wednesday morning. And recently, Johannesburg became a melting pot of global diversity as the Mrs. World finalists descended on the City of Gold, where the pageant was hosted. And congratulations to Mrs. Hong Kong for taking that title. But let's get to know some of the other finalists.
History has been made right here in the City of Gold because for the first time ever, the Mrs. World pageant has taken place right here on African soil. We're certainly proud of our continent, but are the international finalists impressed?
The 40 Mrs. World finalists arrived in South Africa from all corners of the globe. For many, it was their first time on the continent, and they were treated to warm and welcoming African hospitality.
Mrs. Canada, welcome to South Africa.
Thank you very much.
Now, I have to ask you, is this your first time to our colourful country? And if so, did you have any expectations?
First time in Africa happens to be in South Africa 3 months ago. I came and I did wonderful things with UNICEF Canada, the United Nations Children's Fund. We visited children in Soweto. We visited the project in Isibindi.
Now, you speak about Soweto, and on this trip, you also went to some heritage sites and interacted with some wildlife. What was your favorite part of having this experience in Africa?
Just learning the history. Yes, we already knew about Mandela, but when we visited the memorial site, that meant so much because when you look at history, people who have sacrificed so much for what we have is what really teaches you what kind of legacy you want to build.
Now, this is the first time that the pageant is also held not only in South Africa, but in Africa as a whole. Why do you think having a momentous occasion like this on our continent is important?
This is an emotional one for me. As someone who was born in Africa, who has had a wonderful life in Canada, I also remember what my background is. And knowing that we're finally here in Africa means that it's something that I will tell my daughters and their daughters, and I just want to share that Africa is beautiful. This is the beginning of many, many, many years to come.
As South Africa is already a diverse nation, it was an ideal moment in time for these ladies to forge friendships and networks over their shared experience in our rainbow nation.
Mrs. America, welcome to South Africa. Is this your first time to our country, and did you have any expectations coming here?
Well, this is my very first time in South Africa, and honestly, I thought there would be more wild animals everywhere.
Talking about wildlife, earlier this week you went on a safari, you went to see some heritage sites. What was the highlight of the South African experience for you?
Being in South Africa is just a standout. It's hard to pick a few, but really visiting some of the memorial sites to learn the heritage and the history behind South Africa to where it is today. And of course, seeing the animals in their natural habitats and not behind a piece of glass is amazing.
While the international beauty certainly fell in love with our country, it was our very own Mrs. South Africa, Nicole Kappa, that put her best foot forward to show off our rainbow nation at its best. Just a few months ago, you were crowned Mrs. South Africa, and now you are thrust into representing our country at the Mrs. World pageant right here in your hometown. Describe the whole experience.
In the beginning, it was a little bit overwhelming. It took me a little while to find my feet, but I must be honest, now I've really settled into things and I'm loving every single minute of this experience.
Now, the pageant is also historic this year because it's the first time that it's being held in Africa. Why do you think it's momentous for the continent?
I think this is critical because in every discipline, you need a hero to inspire the youth to follow through and do the same. And you see it when people can relate to their golfing hero or their rugby hero or their tennis hero. And hopefully Africans can look at this as an example of women standing together, woman for woman, and they can desire to be the same, not just in a beauty pageant like Mrs. World, but also in their communities, to be able to stand up as strong women. I think it's really relevant for Africans right now.
Mrs. SA certainly showed her international counterparts a trip to remember, and we think teaching them a local phrase will make for a great memory too. So I'd like to teach you a little bit of our culture, and it's a South African phrase. Are you up for the challenge?
Yes.
This is a phrase that's in Afrikaans, and it means I love Africa. It's quite simple. Ek
Ek
is
is
lief
lief
vir Afrika.
Vir Afrika.
Ek is lief vir Afrika.
Ik is lief vir Afrika.
Yeah.
Ik is lief vir Afrika.
This one means I love Africa, and it's in Tswana. You ready?
I'm always up. I can't promise, so don't be offended.
Ke rata Afrika Borwa.
Kerada Africa Bordwa. Yes?
Well done, you got it on your first try. With the Mrs. World pageant behind them, memories of our wildlife, heritage and a new phrase in hand, the Mrs. World finalists certainly are equipped to take enough from our home to theirs.